And so walk around that interferometer, there may be a vibration more than that. And these systems, which are meaning it's very easy to write down the equations as I will show you quickly, but you have to understand that practically these systems are they require very stringent vibration isolation kind of requirements. And so the four interferograms, if you use these four different beams as reference beams, they are shown in these equations. So H1 is the interferogram or hologram that was that we discussed before, but now H2, because you have added a phase shift of pi by 2 into the phi r part, so it's a constant phase shift, so that leads to a minus sign, sign of phi r minus phi o. Then when you add a phase shift of pi, the cosine becomes a minus cosine. And when you add a phase shift of 3 pi by 2, then the cosine becomes a sine. Okay. Are these four equations clear to you? What I have done? So what we have done is in the reference beam, we have added four different phases. And so the value of phase of r, which is phi r, is going to be phi r and then phi r plus pi by 2, phi r plus pi, and phi r plus 3 pi by 2. Okay. And so the interference equation, if you look at it, meaning the four different interference patterns that you record are going to be like this H1, H2, H3, H4. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so how can I get phi r minus phi 0 is, if you took H1 minus H3, that will give you the term cosine. And if you did H4 minus H2, that will give you the term sine. Okay. And so, sorry, this has to be, I have to write inverse of this. So arctan has to be H4 minus H2 by H1 minus H3. Okay. So that I have, so H4 minus H2 divided by H1 minus H3, I have to invert this ratio. This ratio will give you tangent of phi r minus phi 0. And since you generally know the reference beam phase as a calibration step of the system, you can get the phase of O. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So only thing I have not written here is when you record four different interference patterns, each pattern has, when you record on the camera, will also have some noise of its own. And those four noise patterns at the readout time, they will be independent, meaning these are four different frames. And so each H1, H2, H3, H4 has also, in addition to this basic interference equation, in the data that you record, there is also going to be some noise on top of this. And so when you do H4 minus H2, you are subtracting two noises, meaning these are two independent noise realizations. So in terms of standard deviation, the noise increases. And also when you do H1 minus H3, you are subtracting two independent noise realizations. And so the standard deviation of noise again increases. And so phi r minus phi 0, although it looks like a simple equation, there is going to be some noise on top of this kind of measure. And these four equations are assuming that everything has been ideal. So during the recording of four interferograms, nothing else has changed. So you have to really control these systems very carefully. Even something like a airflow or airflow from an air conditioner and things like that, that can also change the stability of systems. So these systems have to be in a stable environment, away from any disturbance. And however, meaning this is another method where which has been popular in literature. So I'm going to show you an illustration of this. So I just took 4 phase shifted maps of, so I have a step object. So by step object, what I mean is you can think of a glass plate and you put a cover slip on top of it, like a microscope cover slip. Now, if this combination, if you imaged, typically the fringe pattern you will get is something like this. So you see that there are straight line fringes, but then wherever there was a glass plate put on another glass plate, there is going to be a discontinuity in the fringes. Okay, and if you look at the same place in the pattern, you will see that all the, meaning as you add phase shifts of 0, pi by 2, pi, and 3 pi by 2, then what happens is there is a phase shift in the fringes. And so if you combine these these 4 interference records from a camera, and if you just put them in the arctan equation, then you will see a phase map. Okay, so you can get a phase map here. Here on the right hand side, I'm showing the phase map where so what I have done is I know what is the reference beam frequency, so I have subtracted it from, meaning I get this result, phi r minus phi o, and so if I know phi r, then I can get the value of phi o, and that phi o I have plotted here. And so this phase is in radians. So here in the illustration, I had taken phase values in the range 0 to 1 radian. This may sound very simple to you, but this is there is actually a whole multi-billion US dollar industry around this phase shifting interferometry. So all optical components that get made, all kinds of optics, eyeglasses, everything, all of that has to be tested after fabrication, so for surface profile. So if you make a lens or if you make a mirror, you have to do testing to make sure that the part has been fabricated correctly. So anytime you buy a mirror or a lens or any face plate or things like that, generally before selling it to you, a company which manufactures it has to actually make sure that the part is made to specification. So a phase shifting interferometry is routinely used in large volumes in all optics facilities. So, and in optics companies which manufacture parts, optics or optical components. So if you go to any vendor of optics, then generally they will tell you that, the surface flatness of what they are selling. So you can get a mirror with, say, lambda by 10 surface flatness or lambda by 4 surface flatness and things like that. So if you are going to do really precise interferometry, then lambda by 10, lambda by 20, that kind of surface flatness is required. Otherwise, in your own interference, the basic interference pattern itself, there could be fringe modulations, because if your mirrors are not flat to that extent. And so, it's not a trivial task. When you say a mirror is flat to lambda by 10, you are saying that the flatness of the mirror is down to 50 nanometers at visible wavelengths. So if it is, so fabricating it is already an involved process. But after fabrication, before any vendor or any manufacturer ships it to a customer, so meaning in my lab, we will routinely be buying optical components. But every time you buy something, somebody has tested it for you, and to make sure that it has been fabricated to that level of precision. And so there are many companies who have, which are there globally, which only work on this stable interferometry and try to give you very good phase maps of the optics that is being manufactured. Is this illustration clear to you? I think it should be clear.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So these two form the main traditional approaches to recovering the object field from the hologram or an interferogram. But in this class, we are going to look at a third method, which is a lot more recent. A lot of work in this area also happened in my group in IIT Delhi. So to some extent, the approach I'm going to teach is evolved out of IIT Delhi work. Not too many people have taken this approach, but this has a lot of advantages. So the point is, why do we need to look for another approach when you see that both Fourier transform method and the phase shifting method, they both seem to work fine, But let us look at these two methods a little more carefully. First, let us look at a Fourier transform method where you only require single hologram frame. So you just have to set up an interferometer precisely, and after that you take one interferogram frame. And this is very good because today if you get good cameras, reasonably good scientific cameras, they are very, very sensitive, and so typically to get a good picture on the camera before the pixels saturate with a typical few milliwatt lasers that are used in your interferometers, you barely need like a millisecond exposure, so to get good quality fringes on a camera, sufficient light. Okay, and so when you do single shot work within 1 millisecond, there is not really much vibration of the surroundings. So even if I'm doing experiment in my lab and there is some construction happening in the building, those vibrations are at few hertz or 10 hertz or that kind of rate. And so even if I'm walking around, if something is happening around in the lab, 1 millisecond, any effect of vibration is essentially frozen. And so it's kind of convenient to have a one-shot system like. But the problem is what we saw is the Fourier transform method, because it is a low pass filtering kind of method, you have low spatial resolution. So compared to your camera, what your camera can resolve, the object field is going to have less resolution. So this we already saw in this picture, that if your fringe pattern is actually resolved well on the camera as per Nyquist rate and all those things, then what it means is that the camera sampling itself has a capacity to resolve this whole spatial bandwidth from all the way from this side to this side. However, because we don't want overlap of these bands, the allowable bandwidth for an object wave is only this much. So it is only 1/4 of what the camera can resolve. Okay, so in a sense, it's a little bit funny because if you look at any of these setups, so suppose I block the reference beam and I make it like a usual microscope, then my camera pixels can resolve, meaning the combination of microscope objective and camera pixels can resolve certain spatial frequencies to some extent, to whatever it is. But as soon as I make this reference beam, so instead of having a usual microscope, I make it a holographic or interferometric microscope, then in one shot I suddenly have to lose 1/4 of the resolution because I don't want these bands to overlap. Okay, so this is kind of a little bit sad that this method is amenable to single shot recording, but the problem is the resolution is not as much as my hardware can, what my hardware can allow me. Okay. And the second method is a phase shifting method, where I really, if you look at the reconstruction here, this was a step-like object, and you can see that the step is very well recovered, meaning once you have 4 holograms, this operation of arc tangent that I have shown here, it works pixel by pixel, and so each pixel works independently, and so there is no reason to lose any resolution. So if you have a sharp edge in the object, your phase map will also have sharp edge, because there is no Fourier filtering here. All that is happening is some algebra for doing h4 minus h2 and h1 minus h3, and then whatever that function is, you are just taking arctangent. So there is no reason to lose any resolution. However, this is hardware-wise, this is more complicated, because now I need vibration isolation. I need additional hardware to change the phases. If I put something like piezo, then for every record of hologram, the piezo has to be calibrated, meaning from time to time, such that it precisely does these pi by 2 and pi and 3 pi by 2 kind of phase shifts. Okay, so it is more complicated from a point of view. It also, because of this extra hardware and the calibrations required, and things become tedious, and it's also quite expensive because of that. So if you want really precise piezos that will do this for you repeatedly over time, meaning it's not just to be done once, but once I make an interferometer, I want to use it maybe 100,000 times before I retire. So meaning I need all the hardware to be that precise, and it should work repeatedly over as a routine job. So daily I should be able to do maybe 20 or 50 interferograms like this, and the piezo should work just fine every day. So if you add up this cost, meaning the system cost of one-shot interferogram versus multi-shot interferogram, the cost can easily add up and become 5 to 10x more. Okay, just because of this vibration isolation requirement. But the main question we want to ask is more fundamental. It's not just a hardware question, but the main question that I want to ask is, does the single shot hologram actually contain the full resolution information? So first of all, we need to know that if the information that we want to recover, the full resolution information, is it first of all there in the hologram itself? And so not being able to recover it via Fourier transform method means that there is some problem with the FTM methodology. It is not that the information is not there. So if I looked at these holograms, for example, 4 holograms, if I wanted to make only a single shot system where only one hologram has to be used, then you see that even one hologram actually does contain the full resolution information. At least I know that the fringes are discontinuous. But the fact that I'm not going to be able to recover this due to filtering process is meaning it's an artifact of the algorithm, and not that in principle the information is not there. Okay, so the question then is, can a better algorithm surpass this difficulty? Okay, so let us look at this illustration again. I have a step object kind of interferogram, the kind of fringes that I showed you yesterday for cells. But you see that again, if you take Fourier transform, you get some lobes. I have shown the Fourier magnitude on a log scale here. You see that these bands are actually extending now quite, much beyond this circle that I showed yesterday. The circle is where we are going to filter, but the energy in the Fourier transform is extending well below that, well beyond that circle, because now this change in the phase is sudden at these 4 edges, at these 4 discontinuities. And so the Fourier transform is not really limited to this circle. When we talked about this overlap condition, you see that the transform is extending more. Okay, but if I want to do filtering, what I see is that the size to which I can use the filter is limited. I can't go to as close as I want to the DC term. And so if I pick any filter, what I will see is that although the interference pattern itself has a sharp discontinuity, suggesting a sharp edge there, what I recover as a phase is not as sharp because it is kind of blurred because this operation was low pass filtering. But the question is, meaning what is clear here is that just by looking at the interference pattern, I can say that, the information is there, but it's just that this methodology, which depends on the Fourier structure of the hologram and requires inherently a low pass filtering operation, that is why I'm not able to recover the full resolution information. And so maybe one can possibly think about better algorithms that can surpass this difficulty. So in the beginning, I said that there is a hardware advantage. So if you can do this in one shot, your system is much simpler. And it can give you same result, meaning the only problem is that the one shot processing part is not like meaning the processing part is a problem that it is going to lose resolution. But the phase shifting method allows full resolution, and but it is complicated from hardware standpoint. But what you see is even if you look at one interference pattern, the information is there. And so we need to think about an alternative to these traditional methods where, if the information is there, we should be able to recover it and we should not lose the resolution. Is this point clear to everybody?
Yes, sir.
Is that clear? Yes.
So last point is not clear.
Okay. So what I'm saying is single shot method is good from a practical standpoint. Okay. So let me summarize it this way, that the single shot method is good from a practical standpoint. But the traditional algorithm that exists for handling the single shot hologram is not good from resolution standpoint. The multi-shot method is hard to implement, meaning it's also expensive to implement, but it gives you full resolution. So it will be nice if you could actually get this full resolution out of single shot itself. Now the fundamental question is, does the single shot hologram actually contain that full resolution information? See, if the single shot hologram for some reason did not contain that information, then there is no hope of recovering that. But you see, when you look at the fringes here, that it does contain the full resolution information because the fringes are discontinuous where there is a step. And so it means that the loss of resolution is not really inherently, meaning it's not fundamental from the data perspective. If I just look at the data, I know that the information I want is there. But unfortunately, the problem is the algorithm I know to recover this. The algorithm is not able to actually recover that. So the fact that we are unable to recover this information is more of an artifact of the algorithmic methodology. And so if I can think of a better algorithm, maybe I can do better than this recovery, because this recovery you can clearly see that although the fringes are discontinuous here, the recovery, the edges are kind of smooth. Okay, so I'm unable to recover full resolution by this Fourier transform method. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Now, I think let me go back. I don't know if I turned on the recording today. Oh, recording is on. Good. Okay. Okay. So let us look at this problem a little bit differently. Okay, single shot problem, meaning we don't think of hologram interference pattern this way, but let us look at this question: that is the single shot solution even unique? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to write the interference equation slightly differently. Okay, So what I have done is I have just rearranged the terms. This is the same interference equation, H equal to R square plus O square plus the cross term. But I have just rewritten it such that now it becomes a quadratic equation in the magnitude of O. Okay, so in general, when you deal with digital holography, generally the hologram is known to you and the reference beam is also known to you. Okay, so for example, reference beam amplitude you can measure just by blocking the object beam on the camera. And if you know what the fringe structure is, you can estimate just from fringes what is the tilt, for example. And so the reference beam is supposed to be known. But the point is, if you write it this way and you write magnitude of O as a solution, you get this solution. Do you see something odd here? So the point is, we have a knowledge of H, we have knowledge of magnitude of R, we have knowledge of magnitude of meaning phase of R, which is phi R, but we don't know the magnitude of O and phase of O. Okay, so that is why what I have done is I have written this equation slightly differently, the interference equation, and then I have actually written the solution, because you can see that this is a quadratic equation in magnitude of O, and so you can solve this. And this solution, meaning this whole thing is working pixel by pixel independently. Okay, so at a particular XY location, H will have some value, R will have some value, phi R will have some value, and then this equation will give you the magnitude of O at that particular pixel again. So this equation can be run parallelly on all pixels. Okay. So do you notice something odd here? Just look at this solution in equation 86 and see if you find something odd.
There are two solutions here.
Well, depending on, but it's a magnitude of O, so I can choose only one of them. So that is fine, because I know that it's the magnitude. So I have to pick the positive valued solution. So that ambiguity is not very difficult to resolve, because I know that I'm solving for magnitude of O. So among the two solutions, whichever is positive, I will pick that solution. Anything else you notice here?
Phi naught is unknown.
Huh?
Phi naught is unknown.
Phi naught is unknown, yes. But what does this mean actually?
We have two unknowns and one equation.
Yes. So what we have is we have only one measurement, H. Okay. Yes. Somebody wants to say something?
Yes, sir. Sir, if we record this on some detector,
Yes.
from that we can get the intensity pattern. And
H.
if we are aware of the intensity pattern, then can't we get the value of phi naught?
Yeah, but that is what I'm asking you. That it looks like you can't get, right?
But why we are equating it with 0?
Well, H is it's just the 85 is just the interference equation rewritten. H has been taken on this side. That's all. If you look at the H equation fine, 85, it is just the interference equation. Okay.
Yes,
so I have not done anything special here. I've just rewritten the interference equation, and I see that it's a quadratic in magnitude of O. So I just solved it. I've done nothing special here.
Okay? Yes, sir, understood.
And then I'm saying that among the two solutions I see, I will pick whichever is the positive solution, because it's a magnitude. Okay. But what is odd here is that the magnitude of O actually depends on phase of O. So what is odd in that?
We can have multiple solutions.
Yeah, so in what we are saying is that there is an infinite number of solutions, isn't it? I can pick any phi O as my phase pattern, and I plug it into this equation. I know my reference beam. I can take completely random phase, white noise kind of phase, and I plug it into this equation 86. I already know my reference beam phase and amplitude. And so for any random choice of phase function phi o, I will get one amplitude as a solution. And so that magnitude O and that phase of O that I have selected will perfectly satisfy my interference equation. Do you see this? What I'm saying?
Sir.
Okay, so what I'm saying is we have infinite number of solutions to this problem. So it seems very odd that we have been studying interference for a very long time, meaning interference is known for more than 200 years now. But in terms of when you look at the physics books or optics books, a lot of emphasis is on more of philosophy of how interference is formed. But there is even this simple discussion is not there in most, meaning almost nowhere you can find this discussion, that when you go to actually recover information out of the interference pattern, you are hit with this ambiguity that meaning there are infinite possible solutions to what the the complex wave OXY is. Even if you know the interference pattern, meaning you have measured the interference pattern, and even if you know the reference wave exactly, you still have two unknowns. You have amplitude phase, or you can say I have unknown as a real part of O and imaginary part of O. And so what I see is I can just pick any random phase function at will, and I can find the corresponding magnitude, and then that magnitude and that phase makes one solution which satisfies my interference data exactly. So because there is no error anymore, I can pick this solution, I can take that phase that I used for generating this solution, and I can plug it back into this. And at every pixel, the error will be 0, and I have a solution that. But the problem is that solution may not make sense, because I have a situation where I can take completely random phase. It will possibly generate a very random looking amplitude, and that's fine. Meaning, how is the interferometry even working anywhere? Okay. So what should we do now? We are faced with the situation that a very benign looking interference equation that we studied since our undergraduate days, it doesn't seem to have a simple solution. It's lucky that in the Fourier method we could identify where the modulation existed in Fourier space, and we could just filter out the solution and get at least an approximate solution. But this kind of consideration in equation 85, 86, this thought can actually come even before thinking about the Fourier transform method. But you see that meaning this is something very, very simple, elementary, but still kind of puzzling. So what should we do when we have faced with this difficulty of multiple solutions? What do you do? Any thoughts that you have?
We look for the solution which satisfy like our requirements or what we are looking for actually. Suppose that we are looking for positive values, so we'll discard the
How do you
negative.
tell that to the algorithm? You have to have an algorithm which tells, because as I just said, I can make at will any number of solutions of this equation. And how do you decide? Meaning, suppose you are doing interferometry of 1,000 mirrors or 1,000 lenses every day. How do I tell that to my algorithm that I want this kind of solution? The other solutions it might throw up is actually wrong.
That question, but in this question particularly, I don't have any answer, but in general we impose some type of conditions. Okay, this
Yeah.
is the condition, and then do
So
calculation.
exactly, it's like we have to put some constraint, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So we need to say that, okay, now that we have ambiguity of solutions, any solution is not acceptable to me. So I'm going to put a constraint. I'm going to put a penalty. Okay. So that, my solution. So, if I just put criterion that I want a solution O that satisfies my interference data H, then I have no way to zero in on one particular solution, because then I have too many solutions, and then I have to decide. And obviously I cannot just generate millions of solutions and just look at them and decide which one is good. I need an algorithm now which will penalize the solutions that I don't want. Okay. So does anything come to your mind? What kind of constraint can be put? Anything based on what we have learned in this class?
TV optimization.
Yeah, so it is like an optimization problem now, that you can say that, okay, I want a solution O which satisfies my interference model, but then O needs to have some other constraint as well as a penalty. Okay. So the question is, what if we try something like this? I already gave you this, the first term of this cost function when we were trying to evaluate the complex derivatives. Okay. But what if I did this problem now? If I said that, well, I know that there is a Fourier method which is like demodulation in communication. There is also this phase shifting method, but meaning I want to solve this problem in one shot. And I think that meaning the H, that is recorded interference, actually contains the full resolution information. And there is no reason, meaning the fact that I'm not able to get that full resolution is more of an artifact of how I'm trying to recover it. But I'm perfectly fine to go for another picture of how the recovery should happen. And so I can say, okay, I'm going to look at this type of problem now. Okay, that the first term is my interference model, where I know the data frame H that I record on the camera. The reference beam R is known by way of calibration of my interferometer. And I don't know the complex valued function O, which I need to find. But I can't have just any solution, because I just saw that there are many possible solutions. And so let us add a constraint term, which is this penalty psi. Okay. But see, the fun about computational imaging is, or the power of computational imaging is here. That what I'm saying is, this is okay that I formulated it as a problem. And then I'm hoping to solve it. So after the minors, I will discuss more of how to solve this problem. But fundamentally, what it does is it just changes the picture. So suppose I say that, well, if I can solve this satisfactorily to get the full resolution, then it means that I really don't need the phase shifting at all, because if I can solve this equation 87, minimization problem satisfactorily, and practically if I can get full resolution, full spatial resolution O, and it looks desirable, it looks meaningful to me based on my data, then I can actually now think of building a single shot holography instrument or an interferometer instrument, which is much easier to build, because I just bypassed all the piezo's and vibration isolation and things like that. So meaning it is low cost, because a lot of this hardware just got bypassed. But it gives us maybe equivalent performance, or as we will see later, it even will possibly give us a better performance. Okay. So the point is, if you go back to how interferometers were made, the thing is that how the design was made, how the hardware was designed, really depended on what your algorithm was to recover the information. So this one thing I want to kind of get to your in your thought is that, you know, the fact that we recorded the information doesn't mean that the recovery of the information is straightforward. Okay, so for example, here when I talked about this interference pattern, the fact that I have recorded it and I have all the full resolution information in this interference pattern doesn't mean that I'm able to recover it, because, you know, all these years the most popular Fourier transform method cannot recover that information. So the fact that I have recorded it doesn't mean that automatically it guarantees that I will be able to recover the information. I also need a corresponding algorithm that really does a good job at recovering that information. But then if I have such an algorithm, then I can really work with a single shot kind of system whose performance will be same as a phase shifting system. And really meaning the idea that such algorithms should be used for image reconstruction actually enables a system. Actually, you know, so traditionally, if you said that I want full resolution, then there is no other way, meaning you will just say, OK, I have to go with phase shifting. Single shot system is just impossible because there is no good algorithm that will recover that information. OK, but suddenly if I say, OK, let's change that approach and let us think in a different way. And let us say that I can solve this equation and I can get the full resolution performance. Then it means that, you know, all these years we were using phase shifting. That was just because our maths was poor. You know, the maths we were using was not very sophisticated. But if we just go to one notch higher in terms of what mathematics we use, then we see that, OK, and if this mathematics is implementable reasonably well, meaning at a not exorbitant computational load, then, you know, the point is a single shot system should be able to give you the full resolution performance. And so the fact that you can solve a maths problem actually says that, you know, you can build a system that you never thought would be possible before. OK, so this thought is very interesting because, you know, our hardware design, system design, you know, in a lot of traditional optics or physics literature, we focus more on the recording part. You know, so we say, OK, there is a lot of philosophy behind, you know, how the interference pattern forms. But, you know, the real thing when you want to put it in a device is to really worry about, you know, how much information I can recover out of what I have recorded. And if I can recover more information, for example, out of data that was considered to be incomplete, now suddenly an instrument becomes possible. OK, so this is something very interesting. And this point will come up again and again, and it will also show you the power of this computational imaging as a whole concept. OK, and so again, we have already done this before that if I see a cost function, then you already know by now that you have to get the functional gradient. And this functional gradient we already evaluated some time ago when I introduced the complex derivatives. And so here, for example, this is the complex derivative for the error part, and there will be some complex derivative for the cost function, depending on what the cost function is. OK. And so if you can design a simple iterative algorithm that follows the minimization of this cost function, then eventually you will get to a solution. And if that solution is what you desire, or if it is physically meaningful, then now you have a system which works at single shot. It can be built easily, and the performance is not really bad. You know, so performance is actually as equivalent as what a full resolution phase shifting system can give you. OK, so you know, it's also interesting that the maths, some interesting mathematics actually enables the cost of the cost reduction of the system. OK, so this is really interesting because typically when you think of low cost systems, many times it means that the parts are cheaper, or the cost to put it together is cheaper. But here what you are saying is, okay, the cost will be less, not because I'm using worse kind of hardware. I can use the same hardware, but the fact that I can solve this problem suddenly says that I can just bypass a lot of hardware and just solve this maths problem, and then get to this kind of single shot full resolution system. Okay. And so this kind of approach to this problem was taken in our lab first time. This appeared in this 2013 article in Optics Express, where we showed that if you take this approach, then actually you can have a perfectly fine full resolution performance, even if you are meaning I'll get into detail of this after minors. But this is a thought I just want to give you, that computational imaging itself as a framework allows you to think of new ways of recovering information, and it can allow you to think about systems that would be impossible to build or considered impossible to build before. Okay, so see, the thing is, interference is known for a long time. Meaning a Mach-Zehnder interferometer is, for example, known for 120 years. But if somebody said, okay, I want full resolution performance for phase imaging out of Mach-Zehnder, nobody would think of actually doing a single shot system. They would say, okay, I want, if you want actually full resolution performance, then we need to set up a phase shifting system, and it will cost this much, and it needs this much of hardware support in terms of vibration isolation and things like that. But now suddenly you say that, okay, meaning the reason all this extra hardware was required was mainly because the algorithm was poor. And so suddenly if you change the methodology for phase recovery, then now I can say, okay, well, this is no longer a limitation of single shot kind of systems, and a single shot should give you full resolution. And I should not really suffer in terms of performance. I can use the same high quality optics, high quality microscope objectives or whatever I want. But I just bypass this requirement that I need to do phase shifting and things like that. Okay. So I just want to close this material before minor with this thought, and then we will discuss details of this a little more after the minor. Okay, so on Friday what I'm going to do is I'm only going to keep the class open for questions. So if you have questions, you come up with questions. I will keep all of my slides available. So if you say go to that topic or this topic, we can go there, and then you can ask me questions at that time. Okay. And if you have any other questions you want to send me email, that is also fine. I can, if there is something that I feel is valuable to all the students in the class, I will also bring up those questions in discussion on Friday. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Is this clear to everybody?
Sir?
Yes.
In equation 87, the function O that we are using, is it obtained from solving that quadratic equation, or is it just a random guess?
No, it is a guess now.
Yeah.
Okay, so O is not obtained by solving the quadratic equation. Meaning if you had, if you don't have this penalty term, then you just have this least square kind of problem. And as you see that the least square problem will have infinite number of solutions. So depending on the initial guess, it will probably find the closest solution in the solution space that makes the error 0. Okay. So it's kind of a funny problem, because optimization, if you have, if you just solve for the minimum error kind of solution, there are infinite number of solutions with 0 error. And so what will happen is, if you try to do iteratively this kind of problem, you will start with some initial guess, and your solution will depend heavily on the initial guess, because it will try to take you to the closest minimum somehow of this error functional. And so that is not a good place to be, that you start with an initial guess and you land up at a different solution every time. So that is not a very good idea. Okay. But you can now, when we add the constraint, then what will happen is suddenly your solution will not be, it will go to the solution will have characteristics that are modeled in the constraint. Okay. So in that case, we will not have this problem. And O is not so taken from the quadratic equation, but it is anything you can start at random and you can improve that solution iteratively. So one possibility, for example, is, if you have the Fourier transform method solution, which is low resolution, but it is possibly a close by solution. So you can start with that as of initial guess and keep updating, minimizing the cost function such that the resolution actually improves. Okay, so that is also one possibility. Okay, is there any other question? Otherwise, I will stop.
Sir?
Yes.